On March 25, 1911, 146 workers, mostly women and girls, died in a horrendous fire at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, which is located in the upper floors of this building on the corner of Washington and Green. Widespread public outrage at the fire galvanized the labor and women's movements and sparked a whole series of social reforms that are still with us today. Dozens of events were organized around the city to commemorate the centennial of this historic tragedy, including a march that ended here at the site of the fire. But a very different kind of remembrance took place at the Judson Memorial Church just a few blocks down the street. There, the new school presented from the fire an original oratorio which was largely the work of three brilliant and very determined women. Award-winning composer Elizabeth Swados, architect turned set designer Bonnie Roche Bronfman, and the oratorio's writer and director Cecilia Rubino. What was it about this event, this tragedy, that you decided to choose it to memorialize? I mean, other tragedies have occurred since the fire.
Yeah, it's very important that we remember Triangle not because of the fire. We remember Triangle because of the strike. The year beforehand, in 1909, 200,000 young teenage women went out on strike in the streets of New York. It was the first strike by women in the history of this country. They were literally just poor teenage girls.
Sewing at work is nudny boring. I stitch the same lace onto the same white shirt. Boring. White shirts, 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 white shirts. I daydream all day, but at night I can't sleep.
They were just people that got up to go to work. They weren't people who were heroes. They were normal, ordinary people, but extraordinary. Many of them traveling across Europe to come here in this tremendous convergence of immigration that happened. The very astonishing thing are the people who survived the fire and the political voices that they developed.
Now, dealing with a real-life tragedy like this kind of lends itself to the possibility of romanticizing, of sentimentality, of cliches, even of propaganda, all things which you were able to avoid. What did you do to make sure that those pitfalls did not occur?
I have a really low tolerance for sentiment. So, and it really mattered to me that these be authentic people. Obviously your storytelling, but that they have humor and life and that you were engaged with them and that they weren't angels. So you have a character who's not perfect, you have family fights, you have the altercations at work, and then somehow this event intrudes.
Windows were on fire. I ran through the smoke towards the Washington Place stairs. The door wasn't locked. Sadie, Sadie, has anyone seen my sister? Sadie and I were in the dressing
I think having students, college students involved also really helped whittle away any sentiment because they also have a low tolerance for that and were really helpful in terms of shaping and cutting and thinking about things.
Sing it,
Composer Elizabeth Swados has received 5 Tony nominations, 3 Obies, and many other awards and honors during her nearly 40-year career in the theater. How is it different to work with students than with professional actors?
You have to keep after them a lot.
More?
Because, oh yeah. Because the value of such things as dynamics, for instance, to them it's just slow, fast, high, low. They don't realize that to go soft all of a sudden is an emotional moment.
Fingers weary and worn, with eyelids heavy and red, a woman sat in unwomanly.
Are you pleased how they learn from you?
I'm always pleased with a group of students that's committed and that really works and that really practices. To me, that's the future of musical theater, is smart, young people.
At the moment of the oratorio when the fire starts and things change, the music changes too, in a way that conveys this fear in a very profound, palpable way. How did you manage that?
I think a composer has to be an actor. And I think you have to kind of rummage up feelings of your own, and you have to rummage up kind of like situations that you've been in. You don't consciously do that. It's not Stanislavski or anything like that. But something comes up inside of you, and you can feel it. You can feel it, and it changes the chord changes in the music, it changes the melodies in the music, it changes what the voices do.
Fire, 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 fire. Smoke filled from everywhere. Blinding smoke. The floor under my feet was on fire. The green street staircase was a wall of fire. Fire, 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 fire. Scraps, chairs, tables, fire.
Now you have said that it's a composer's job to commemorate, that composers are supposed to memorialize.
Right.
Why? Why is that your job?
Composers are supposed to bring emotion to the forefront. I mean, I think we're the most emotional on some level to the unconscious. We go right to the unconscious. I mean, you can't talk a melody or talk a harmony. So it's our job to commemorate people, to go to those places of grief and of memory and of politics, of important, and to bring them back.
They were screaming in so many languages. Calling for their children, their sisters, as my elevator descended for the last time.
Architect Bonnie Roche Bronfman was one of the people who convinced Cecilia Rubino to write the Triangle Fire Oratorio. It was Rubino, in turn, who convinced Roche Bronfman to take the leap and become the oratorio's set designer. Essentially, you came up with an idea of these long spare tables serving as the set, serving multiple functions. They're the sewing table, they're the kitchen table, they're window frames, they're the doors of the elevator, of course, they're the caskets and many other things. How did you come up with this really simple yet really elegant idea?
Thank you. Well, I knew that we needed something that was very abstract, that we could not have this oratorio set in any literal way, because it really is the abstraction of this universal idea that I think will carry it forward. And I thought, what is the most essential element in the lives of these people? The only place there was physical order in their entire universe was at work, when it was rigid and they were tied to their tables, metaphorically, and in death, when they were lined up on the pier in coffins. So I really cared very much about seeing one geometry juxtaposed to another geometry, this very enforceable, very brutal, rigid geometry in the factories, and of course the absolute death cry of the geometry on the pier, and that everything else was juxtaposed to that.
As the empty hearses heaped with flowers passed,
There's few pieces of theater that I've seen that I would say pack such a wallop, or that can teach such a lesson as the work you did. But I'm reminded of something that Joan Didion told me and surprised me coming from her. It was that ultimately she doesn't think any work of art really changes you or teaches you anything. It's only your personal experience that does that. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
But theater is personal experience. So you're viscerally, that's where you're viscerally sitting in a space communally with a group of people, and it is an experience. It is actual social change occurs, and it's a space where we come together and wrestle with things that we don't have answers for.
100 years from now, Sadie's brother will be remembered.
What was the most rewarding part of being a part of this project?
The rewarding part was that I think that the women were brought forth, that their spirits really were in the piece. I think that the history, and I think that the youth, and I think that the loss, I think it really came forward.